Hi guys, my name's Natalia and welcome to my channel. Today I've got a March and April wrap-up for you. I read 3 books in March and 4 books in April, and today I want to share my thoughts on them. Some of them were really good and became my new favorites, and some of them were quite disappointing. So let's get into it. So the first book I read in March was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I actually recorded a reading vlog of me reading this book. So if you're interested in that, I will leave the link down below. But it's a fantasy novel about this girl named Addie LaRue who lives in 18th century France, and she makes a deal with this dark force, dark god. And that deal grants her immortality. But the trick is that she gets forgotten by everyone she meets. And then fast forward to present time, to I believe it's like 2014. We see Addie LaRue living in New York. She still gets forgotten by everyone she meets. So it's not an easy life, but you know, she's getting by, and one day she will meet a guy that remembers her, and it will trigger a lot more events happening. I gave this book 4.5 stars. My main complaint is that it was really slow, and sometimes the books start off slow but they pick up the pace, but this one didn't really pick up the pace. It was slow throughout the entire book, so that was my main complaint. But other than that, it was a very emotional story. It was very beautifully written. I highlighted so many of the quotes because they were so incredible and thought-provoking. It's a very character-driven story. So, you know, if you are looking for a fast-paced, plot twist-filled story, this is not it. This really focuses on the character's inner journey. Apart from Addie, we also follow Henry. And I love him so much because of how relatable he is. A lot of his struggles felt really relatable. Feeling like he's never enough, feeling like he doesn't fit anywhere, feeling like he's too much, and all of that. It just felt so real and so relatable, and I just wanted to give him a big hug. I love my guy Henry. Okay, he was a huge highlight of this book for me, even though the main character is obviously Addie, but he just added a lot of depth to the story. All I can say is, if you don't mind slow, very character-driven stories, then I think you should definitely pick it up because it's really worth reading. It's a very special type of book. The next book I read is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book marks the beginning of the dark academia subgenre. I gave it 5 stars. It is probably the most haunting book I've ever read, and I still, to this day, I cannot get it out of my head. I cannot stop thinking about it. So in this book, we follow a tight-knit group of elite students at a small university. They study classical Greek. And there's only a few of them. They also have a pretty eccentric professor. And right off the bat, right at the beginning of the book, we find out that one of them ends up dead. It's a very interesting concept. It is an inverted mystery. So even though we know who dies and we kind of know who's responsible for his death, we really focus on the psychological aspect of it all. So the entire tension comes from why it happened and how it happened and the aftermath of Bunny's death. The atmosphere is really haunting. It's very cold and dark, but also weirdly elegant. The writing is beautiful. It's really lyrical and really thought-provoking. And now the characters. Honestly, the characters are a huge part of why I love this book. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not necessarily likable, and I do not necessarily support most of their decisions. The characters are really all morally questionable, and they make some terrible choices. But they are just so fascinating to read about. And there were even times when I found myself rooting for them, because even though they did some messed up things, they still just felt so realistic. And at times, I found myself actually liking them and rooting for them. They all felt so unique, and they all felt like real fleshed out people. And also just like the entire plot of this book, it feels like something that could definitely happen in real life. And I feel like that's the most terrifying part. I feel like it's not a book for everyone. There will be people that will not really enjoy it, or they will feel bored because the chapters are pretty long and it might feel a bit slow, although I personally didn't feel bored at all. But I know some people might not like it. But if you like morally gray characters, slow building tension, and dark academia vibes, you should definitely 100% read this, because it's a masterpiece. The next book I read is called Very Dangerous Things. It's actually an ARC that I received through NetGalley. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. In this book, there is this school that runs a yearly murder mystery event for its criminology student. So there's like a murder mystery, and they're meant to solve it. But this year there is a twist, because one of the students actually ends up dead. And, our protagonist is trying to solve the case. So I think it was like a very quick and fun read. I honestly didn't predict the ending, so I feel like it was a well-written mystery. However, the reason I didn't rate it higher is because, I don't know, like some of the characters felt really cliche, and like for some reason the stakes didn't feel that high for most of the story, even though there was an actual murder that took place. It felt like they were just playing a game. It didn't really feel that serious. I don't know. I feel like it leaned really heavily into the YA vibes, and I'm saying it as someone who really enjoys YA thrillers in general. There were many YA thrillers that I really liked. They were really well written and I rated them quite high. But I feel like this one leaned into the YA aspect even more. So, if you're okay with the thriller not being really that deep and being a little more lighthearted, I guess, then yeah, you might enjoy it. But other than that, I don't think like it was such a great book. Okay, now we move on to my April reads. The first book I read in April is called Fate Inked in Blood. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a Norse-inspired fantasy novel, which I think is very interesting. And in this book, we follow Freya, a fishmonger's wife, who suddenly finds out she's tied to an ancient prophecy. And she's supposed to unite a kingdom under a power-hungry king. But obviously, there's more going on behind the scenes. So, this book has like magic, warrior training, gods battling in mortal lives, and a forbidden romance. So romance plays a huge part in this book, I think. So, I really enjoyed the romance, but I feel like maybe there was a little too much focus on the romance, and because of that, some other parts of the book suffered. For instance, the world building felt a bit lacking. So I feel like it should be a little more balanced out. But nevertheless, the romance was actually pretty good. It's like a slow burn, forbidden romance, and it's also pretty spicy. So I'm telling you in advance, if you don't like books like this, then it's not for you. But generally, I felt like the world, because it's Norse inspired, it felt like fresh and it felt like something I have not read before. And the story was really fast paced with a good balance of action and drama. So in general, I did really enjoy this read and I can recommend it. The next book I read was a thriller called None of This Is True. So this one unfortunately was a disappointment. So I originally gave it 3 stars and then I lowered it to 2.5 stars. And let me tell you why I didn't like it. So it started off pretty good. It's got this like podcast / documentary format, and we follow these 2 women Alex and Josie, and they randomly meet at a restaurant, and it turns out that they are birthday twins. And Josie kind of starts to insert herself into Alex's life. Like, Alex is at first doesn't really want to have anything to do with her, but she finally agrees to do a podcast on Josie's life. And as they are doing the podcast, like, very strange details of Josie's life start coming up. At that point, it's getting like really eerie and unsettling, and I was actually quite enjoying this book. But the ending, it just felt so flat to me. First of all, it felt pretty predictable. So what is more, the ending left so many of the things unresolved. Like, literally, when I finished the book, I had even more questions than when I first started it, okay? Like, literally so many questions were left unanswered. It just left me feeling so confused. We were not really sure which things were true and which things were lies. I didn't really like that concept. You know, I'm reading this thriller story to get like a full, fleshed out, solid story with answers, and I felt like I just didn't get these answers, so I didn't really like that feeling. And also, there was like this really icky relationship portrayed in this book, a relationship between a 40-year-old man and a minor. So honestly, since this is a thriller, I don't think that it's bad that the author chose to portray such a relationship. It's bad that she didn't condemn it enough. I feel like it was kind of glossed over, and all the blame was put on the little girl, and they said like how she manipulated this man into being with her. I mean, she was just a baby, and you know, no matter how many mistakes she did as an adult, this does not make it okay for this 40-year-old man to pursue a relationship with this little girl. So that part left just some icky feeling in my mouth. I just feel like the author didn't address this issue properly. It just felt so icky, and it felt like just the girl was blamed for everything. Like, she was this manipulative, evil, you know. So honestly, I didn't really like this book. Okay, the next book I read is one of my new favorites, and it's Funny Story by Emily Henry. It's the first book I've ever read by Emily Henry, and I was not disappointed. I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. So in this book, we follow Daphne, who gets dumped by her fiance, and he dumps Daphne, and he goes to his childhood best friend. And that childhood best friend also dumps her boyfriend, whose name is Miles. And so Daphne, you know, she was envisioning like her whole future with this man, and now suddenly she doesn't have anything. You know, she doesn't even have a place to live. So she ends up actually moving in with her ex-fiance's childhood best friend's ex-boyfriend. So, you know, the guy that the childhood best friend was dating, and they broke up. Daphne ends up moving in with him, mainly because she doesn't have any other place at the moment, so they become roommates. But yeah, obviously it's a romance, so they will start having feelings for each other, but they also kind of fake date. So kind of started off as, you know, a way to make their exes like angry, and also kind of as a joke. Daphne like said that she's dating Miles, which was not true at the time. So they started like kind of trying to make it look like they're actually dating in front of their exes, for many different reasons. Okay, I know this might sound pretty stupid, but I actually really liked this trope. I feel like most of the times when there is like a fake dating trope, I just don't understand the point. But I feel like in this book, I could like understand why they were actually doing it, because obviously they were angry that their exes like suddenly dumped them to be with someone else. So, you know, they felt a bit angry, and they just wanted to show them off that they're happy without them. and they will actually end up falling in love with each other. I really loved Miles. Like, I literally fell in love with this man. I also really liked Daphne. She's very relatable. She loves books. She's a librarian, and she has this like socially awkward personality, which I love because it's very relatable. There are also a lot of like really heartwarming friendships in this book. So in general, it's a very fun and heartwarming story, and I loved it so much. Okay, in the next book I read in April was actually a reread. I reread Six of Crows, which is the first book in the Six of Crows duology. I will also be rereading the second book probably in May. So this is one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. Maybe not even one of my favorites. It is my favorite fantasy book of all time. And it's been like 3 years since I first read it, and I honestly loved the rereading process because I felt like I forgot a lot of the small details and I could just like experience them again. I just enjoyed it so much, and rereading this really solidified my love for this book. This book has everything you might want from a fantasy novel. It's got this high stakes, an impossible heist, fast-paced action, plot twists, banter, intriguing characters, slow burn romance, found family, and more. So honestly, all I gotta say, if you haven't picked up this book yet, you should catch up. It is actually quite a hyped book, I do admit it, but I feel like it is worth all the hype that it's getting. It's just so well written. The world building is so immersive, and just the entire storyline and all the characters are so unique and just so entertaining to read about. All I can say, it's maybe even the best book I've ever read. So thank you, Leigh Bardugo, for writing this masterpiece, and I will probably never recover from this book, and I will probably think about it every day for the rest of my life, but I'm so grateful that you wrote this book. Okay, I know she's not watching, it's just for fun. Anyway, so these were all the 7 books that I read in March and April. So my favorite ones were probably Six of Crows, Daw, and Funny Story, and The Secret History. So these were like my top 3, but I did enjoy most of these books, except for None of This Is True. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!